right, good evening. I'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It's December the 5th at 7:01. Ask for the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here.
Jason Whitman.
Here.
Ron Haza. Joe Edmond. Richard Hawk. Mario Rios.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Here.
Oh. Mike McLaughlin. Here. Mike McLaughlin.
I was waiting for that.
Okay, and we have Rick Schroeder and Susan Darst from staff are here, and Alex Blue from council. And we can move ahead to the fourth item, excuse me. Third item, I'm way ahead of myself. Citizens to be heard. I don't believe we have anybody here tonight to speak, so we can do the minutes. November the 7th meeting, which was in your packet, if you've had a chance to review it. If there are any edits, corrections, changes, please call those to our attention, or we can have a motion.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mario, all in favor of approving the minutes from November 7th meeting as submitted, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, we move to item 5 tonight, which is discussion and action on a request by Avisa Helotes for approval of exterior building colors for Helotes Point Retail Center, located in the Bandera Oaks subdivision and addressed generally as 12522. And is anyone representing tonight that property?
Yes.
Great. You weren't here last month, I don't believe. So if you wouldn't mind putting your name and business address on record. As folks will recall, this is the item that we had approved last month except for the exterior colors because of the representation in this diagram that we had. Nobody was quite sure what the coloring scheme was. So go ahead.
My name is Armando Niebla with KFW Engineers.
So are you, so we've received, I presume, Rick, this is for that project, right? So this is the representation of the colors themselves. And so everyone should have seen in your packet, there were photocopies. And there's only one of these to pass around, so. And this is really very, very helpful to have because it's like an avocado green and what we had or something, and that's not really what it is. Let me pass it this way.
Okay.
And give people an opportunity if they have questions, take a look at that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
this is the true color representation on this chart?
I take that to be the case. Yes, that is the color they'll be using.
May I see that?
So what we have on the handout is different.
Well, I mean, I think it's a photocopying issue more than it is anything else, right?
It's going to print different on any printer, no matter where you're at. It would, based on resolution.
Very good. Glad you brought this in.
Those are true samples prepared by the project architect. I'm not the architect, but that was prepared by them. So that would represent the colors that are.
Very nice, thank you.
Let's pass it this way so folks can,
What should I reference the sample to? The architect samples?
yeah, that would work. This is from the architect.
That is correct.
Rick, you hadn't been part of this discussion last month, but did you have anything to add on this particular?
No, sir.
And this is a approval piece, guys. This is not recommended. The other part was as well, what we did last month. Right. So unless there are questions, Jason, do you have anything on this one? No. We've seen that? All right. If people are comfortable, we can have a motion on this item.
Chair, I'd like
Yes,
to
Mario, go
make a
ahead.
motion to approve.
If you wouldn't mind reading it out for us. Number 5.
Motion to recommend to approve discussion of and action on a request by Abiso Helotes LP for approval of exterior building colors for Helotes Point Retail Center located on a 4.498 acre lot described as Lot 5, Block 2 within the Bandera Oaks subdivision and addressed generally as 12522 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas, 78023.
And just to clarify, you'd said recommend to approve, but this is an approval item. That's all right with you? We're approving.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mike, further discussion, any discussion? Mario? Mike?
No, I'm good.
Anybody else? You'd pass along our thanks to the architects.
Absolutely.
This wasn't a trivial issue, given trying to maintain a certain aesthetic for the community, and what this reproduced as just wasn't, we wanted to be sure.
Certainly, I understand.
May I have, would you add to your recommendation, approving it to the architect samples?
We could do that.
Okay.
So amending it to say approval of the exterior building colors in the architect samples?
Yes.
All right. Is that all right with you?
Hmm.
So there's a clear reference?
Means better,
Fine.
is that more accurate?
Do we need to restate that, or?
No, that's okay, you're all right with it, so everybody else is good, no other comments. So all, the motion is to approve the request from Abiso Helotes for the exterior building colors as represented in the architect samples for Helotes Point Retail Center located in the Bandera Oaks subdivision, addressed generally as 12522 Bandera Road. So all in favor, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. Thanks for coming out with that.
Thank you very much.
At the request of city staff, we're going to pull from the agenda item number 6, as there's not quite ready yet to go with that one, so we will skip that this evening. And move to item number 7, which is discussion of proposed revisions to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Section 69, the overlay district B3 in the zoning code, subparagraph C1, permitted and non-permitted uses, including but not limited to tavern with or without outdoor areas. This is a discussion item only, and I would ask the administrator to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I asked that this be placed on the agenda. For some time now, we have had multiple reputable and well-established bar organizations, if you will, come to the city and want to do business here in the city, and they typically want to go in the B3 overlay area, closer to the Walmart area, and closer to 1604. Some of those have been the Line in the Rose, have been Big Hops Growler, some franchiser chains that we have in the Bear County community and throughout the country that are actually well designed and I believe well thought out. What I am proposing tonight, number one, I think the term tavern is a little antiquated, but I think that given the new architectural aesthetics for bars, for standalone bars, or for bars that are going into existing shopping centers, I believe it may be appropriate for us to look at whether we want to start allowing these types of establishments in the B3 overlay district. What I would propose would be to move them from an outright unpermitted use to the section 2 that would be permitted, but through the city council specific use process. Just like we do drive-through facilities and other types of uses that may or may not be fitting in the B3 overlay district, which is why they go through that review process. I just included some pictures of freestanding taverns or bars, and I think traveling around this country, you have seen stuff that's well done and stuff that is not well done, and I think that there's a place in B3 overlay for these types of establishments. And I hate saying to potential good franchisees like Big Hops Growlers, like Line in the Rose, or Freetail Brewery and Bar, that they are not allowed in the area of town that they want to be in, when in fact they actually are upstanding, reputable businesses that have a significant following and could bring individuals into the city of Helotes in positive ways. I think that this was drafted back in the day when, unfortunately, the Cowboy Bar was across the street, and there were some issues with that type of establishment. We do have bars throughout town, not very many. I think we could have more for areas for people to meet and congregate, but we haven't had any issues that I'm aware of from some of the bar facilities that we have in town for quite some time. So I think it's time. I only put this on a discussion item for y'all. If y'all do wish to proceed with looking at this, it would have to go through the formal zoning process amendment that would go to P&Z and would go through the city council process as well.
As we take a few minutes to talk about this, would you be able to call up the zoning map?
Yes.
So folks can be aware of it. And to clarify, the permitted uses in the B3 overlay district, the section 2, where you're proposing to move this potentially, do those uses require city council approval? Or are they automatically approved? Are they permitted?
No, I'm proposing that they be moved to the city council specific use permit process. So they would be permitted if they are approved by city council through that process.
Which is similar to everything else that's listed in that category.
Yes.
So presumably we get a crack at it first as well to
You-
recommendation of approval or disapproval.
It would go through that use process,
Right.
that would go to P&Z first, and then it would go to city council.
Though in practice, I could be wrong about this, but I don't recall this body or council turning down businesses for proposed uses. I don't believe, that are in that category, in other words. Do you have any recollection of,
I don't follow the question. Can you?
so the items in section 2, the automobile, the car washes, the rental cars, et cetera, that require the specific use permit, have we as a city not issued a specific use permit for anybody in those categories that you know of?
A convenience store,
Yes. Convenience store?
that was recent, automobile fueling station, convenience store in the B3 overlay, next to Walmart. That's the most recent example, but I'm sure there's probably some more.
Sure. Let's see make sure everybody knows the area we're talking about.
Mr. Chair, I see.
Hang on just one second, let me. Colors are hard to distinguish.
So the area that we're talking about is in the purple shade here.
So primarily along Bandera Road, on the 1604 side of City Hall, with a small piece across from City Hall. Is there anything further up Bandera Road?
The piece actually across from City Hall is a different color. That's the
Is it?
plan, it's zoned PDD, for Planned Development District.
As I recall, there's a section at Scenic Loop Road and Bandera Road as well.
Not of overlay. Yeah, the only overlay that we have in the city is this section right here.
Oh, the purple?
Yeah, this purple
Okay.
color.
We'll go to Ron here.
The purple or the blue? I'm
The
sorry.
purple.
Purple.
Purple. Where the cursor is right now.
Blue is
E4.
B3.
Agree? Oh, agreed.
This is B3 overlay. This is B3, the blue area, and this really ugly color right here, green or whatever it's called, it would be a B4 zoning designation.
Ron,
I was just looking through the list here. Now, at one time, we had banned hotels or had taken those off. Is that true? Do I remember?
hotels are listed in item I, right?
Yeah.
So a hotel is.
We
is
moved
theoretically
hotel-
Permissible.
Yeah, we moved a hotel from the unpermitted uses to permitted as long as they go through the process.
Okay.
You brought up, I'm sorry, Jason, do you have a comment?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, Rick, you brought up as an example of one of these businesses, Freetail. And just thinking about the terminology we're using here, do you consider Freetail to be a restaurant or a bar?
Retail would actually be considered a microbrewery.
So in other words, alcohol is not incidental to that business. It is the primary use of that business as opposed to a restaurant that
Yes.
you could also get a
None of
beer.
the ones that I was talking about, even if they had food, would be incidental to food sales. They serve much more alcohol than they do food.
You don't think, though, that letter K, restaurant with drive-through alcoholic beverage incidental, that wouldn't necessarily already capture what you're thinking about?
No.
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but there is a specific state law, I think, that pertains to the percentage of sales.
It's 51%.
So I think 51, then you go over into, you know, quote-unquote bar, tavern territory as opposed to strictly restaurant territory. So I'd imagine that our code alludes to that and when its definitions of these facilities.
Other comments, questions?
Oh, I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Is this, for Rick, is this just being proactive for something down the road, or is there actual something on the docket in the batter's box coming?
There is nothing on the docket, if you will, coming. That we have in the past, at the staff level, told people that they could not proceed because they were located in B3 overlay and taverns were outrightly a non-permitted use, whether they had an outdoor area or they were completely enclosed. And so this is more being proactive. You know, I don't believe that taverns or bars or something have the stigma that they once did. And I think that it could fit well in this community as long as it goes through the proper review process.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, I think my biggest concern would be, and this, I think, could be addressed by, you know, keeping it under the specific use permit, would be, you know, things like setbacks from adjacent uses, which, you know, may not be so compatible, such as residential or, you know, religious facilities. Obviously, there's other TABC laws that pertain to that. But I think at a minimum, I'd want to see us have a chance to take a crack at that and, you know, be assured for the community's sake that, you know, we're not sticking one of these with a you know, beer garden and a band hut, you know, right next to somebody's house or a church, for example.
I completely agree with that, and in stating that, pretty much all of B3 overlay is right next to residential neighborhood.
I think that was, if I remember historically, that was part of the reason for the B3 overlay to begin with, was because it borders Cedar Springs there. And the same with the neighborhood on the other side of Bandera.
The issue with that, however, is that the distances from Bandera Road to the rear of Cedar Springs are significant, in addition to the rear of Helotes Crossing. And actually, and I'm not arguing this point, again, I put it on as discussion only, because if y'all don't want to do it, I won't do it, or we won't proceed with it. But literally, every commercial zoning district we have in the city abuts single-family residential. The idea through the master plan was that you would have all of your commercial along Bandera Road, i.e. because it's a highway, and everything off of the highway would be residential, which makes perfect sense.
Right.
Even this industrial area over here backs up to the rear of Helotes Crossing. So my point there would be that there is no area that in the city of Helotes that you would not have that concern.
And that, I agree with what you're saying, that's true. I think, I was just trying to reiterate what we did, or the council at the time did, with the overlay district with that intent in mind. And the other parts of Helotes, that was, like you say, when we were incorporated, basically, it just, nobody knew any better, or, you know, didn't want to take that into account, so here we are. I think it's worth talking about. I'm certainly open to it, but just have to realize, where that overlay district came from and why it was put there.
I think the harder part to think about is the bar with outdoor seating. We have a bar with outdoor seating in B3 right across the street here, a small outdoor area that I don't typically see used very much, my just observation, but there is outdoor seating there, right? If you look at the images that you circulated, the first one, it's hard to tell, but it looks like a fairly discrete, small, self-contained space. The second one looks like a much larger space, probably could, it looks like it's an outdoor bar, possibly it could be a music, something set up with music there. I think that's the one that would be more challenging. I think that you're exactly right about the commercial intent of that Bandera Road strip, and that's how it's designed, really to serve the commercial needs. And I think, I'm speaking personally here, I'd be much more amenable to proposing moving the enclosed one down. I think it's the outdoor one where we're going to run into some issues, particularly given the surrounding residences, that I don't know that it would be effective to manage that through the specific use process. I don't know that I would be comfortable going that route, but I, welcome to hear what others think about this.
You wouldn't be comfortable with the indoor,
No, with the outdoor.
with the outdoor through this process?
Right.
Got it.
I also favor changing tavern to saloon to fit with the old town feel. But that's another subject, I suppose.
Yeah, to me, I think outdoor dining is not as bad as outdoor, music or either the playing of a system or having a live band. I think is a bit more problematic given the proximity of these to the residential zones. But I hang out at the Wine 101 area all the time. There's a couple of places there, and they're not terribly loud, even with the outdoor, fair amount of outdoor dining. I think that even the, what's the place up here, next to the Silverado Theater, the kind of a cowboy bar in that little strip mall there. I mean, they have some outdoor space, and it's not a terribly loud, Cooter Brown's.
Cooter Brown's, that's it.
Yeah. Is it the music, or is it the? Yeah, yeah.
I think, I live close to Flores, and I hear the music every night, every weekend. I don't think it's bad, it doesn't bother me, but I do hear it. Our kids hear it too, when the
But keep
windows are
in
closed.
mind,
But
Flores
I have my thought was, I didn't get to finish my thought. My thought was that it doesn't bother me, it's part of the ambience of Helotes, but my thought here for the discussion is, and just putting it out there is, I don't have a problem with the outdoor either. I think it adds flavor and charm to our city. But if it's a nuisance, or if it's noise pollution, if you will, for primarily residents in B3 overlay, possibly the discussion could go where there's I don't know, is there a limit? Like, you can't flood the area with taverns or bars, but maybe there's only a certain amount of those types of businesses that could be added into that area. But I don't, in my mindset right now, I think that it could be a plus for us to have this type of establishment. But again, I am conscious of how it could become a negative for people who live close proximity in their homes. But as Rick said earlier, I mean, we're in Helotes and we're landlocked here, and we're all near something, and I'm near Flores, and I'm not knocking on the owner's door telling him to lower the music because it's just part of Helotes.
As far as floors and even Pete's Place or something like that goes, is there a city ordinance that limits that they have to cut off by midnight or one? No?
We have no noise ordinance, and I have a feeling that has to do with floors. I don't think it would bode well for the city if we were shutting down floors every Saturday night. So I have a feeling it has to do.
There was
stopped at like midnight or
I
something.
think in the, must have been nineties, even 1990s, the city council was talking about a noise ordinance. And I don't think it was talking about floors per se, but the discussion at the time was to enforce it, you have to be able to measure the noise. And so where do you go to measure it, at what time? All these technical things come into play about what distance away are you gonna measure it and all that. It'd be very difficult to enforce from, decibels and those types of readings where you'd have factual information. So that kind of went away at the time.
If you look at the code itself for the overlay district, and the purpose of it, there's several items listed regarding the heritage of the city, environmental protection and so forth, but one of them actually is preserve, protect, and enhance nearby residential areas. And so I think anything that we do has to be considered in that context. How does a bar with outdoor seating or only indoor seating, how does that serve the purpose of the overlay district? Becomes the question. And as I recall, it's been several years now, Ron, you may remember this, or Joe, the Lion and the Rose was approved.
Yes.
I don't remember all the particulars of that, but they ultimately chose not to build out here.
The same discussion we're having now, we had then when we were talking about overlay, exact same thing.
I don't recall if there was an outdoor piece to that particular.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
talked about putting it in the front instead of the back, I think, of
Yeah.
our discussion.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have a sense from council on this being, this is
I
staff
haven't
at this
talked, I haven't
point? Okay.
talked to council about this at all.
Well, I mean, I think you can sense that there's at least willingness to consider it. And maybe if you want to draft something else for us to talk about. I don't know that we're at the stage yet where you'd want to, you'd have to do public notice, right? I think it would be helpful, I do think it would be helpful to get council input, their perspective on it. And again, I don't want to speak for others, but at least part of this, I think, is worth pondering. The overlay is the strip that's on Hausman. Oops.
Of course.
That is part of it as well. That is unbuilt right now, is that correct?
Yes. Well, the upper portion on
The-
Houseman is. The portion below that, I believe, has a post office and a car wash on it.
Is the post office in the overlay?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Federal, it wouldn't matter.
Right,
Federal government isn't subject to our zoning regulations.
right. And
But the
many
car
of the,
wash is in the overlay.
the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the new car wash, the other businesses we've been talking about and have appeared in the past 6 to 12 months, those are all in the overlay abutting Bandera. And as you recall, for each one of those businesses, they're sitting on the Bandera, the fronting Bandera, but the property goes back. And so the Bandera frontage, there's not that much of it that's left, right? I mean,
I would have to go back and look.
so just sort of by definition, and not necessarily all of it, but on the, what is that, the north side of Bandera, if that Bandera frontage is already occupied, any new business that would be coming in, bar, anything else, the space for it would be on the back end. And so that's something else to keep in mind as we think about, would you approve a use back there for this type of business?
And the economic feasibility of somebody like Lion and Rose going behind, they would want frontage directly, visibility directly on Bandera Road. They would not want to go back behind a car wash or something. It just wouldn't happen.
No, but right now, next to the KFC, they're putting in a y'all just approved tonight the shopping center. And they originally, Big Hops Growlers was interested in going in that location, but we had to tell them they couldn't go because it was in B3 overlay.
Well, is the sentiment that we should look at something about adjusting this? Is everybody comfortable with that? I mean, we're not, I think it would be, it's sort of in conjunction with that in the intervening time, if you wouldn't mind sounding out council. We don't want to waste our time with it or resources and doing a public notice and if there's no sentiment for this, but I think you at least heard a variety of opinions up here, and I think
Okay.
let's pursue 'em.
I'd be interested to see.
The overlay, and remember how the overlay works, right? If it's not a use that's specified in here, then the underlying use for the zone is what governs, right? So if we don't call it out in section 1 or 2, then it's permitted if it's permitted in the regular B3. I wonder, Rick, if does it bear, if we're doing something like this right now, maybe it'd be a good idea to look at the overlay district, all of the uses, and make sure that we have that being, if we want to update it. It's part of the uses in there that we'd want to adjust in terms of adding in anything as a prohibited or permitted, shifting things around at all. This would probably be a good time for that.
Okay.
Okay, we can shift gears now. We're going to switch over to item 8, which is our sign ordinance. And our city administrator just gave us at the start of the meeting a clean copy of his revisions. We all had a little homework assignment to look at particular sections, and I think if it's all right, Rick, we'll just work from the track changes copy that everybody had, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Seem all right by you? So let's see how expeditiously we can do this. Give me a moment. Which is the copy that you have, we're working from? Is it from this one?
Yes.
Right, okay. We're working from the one that,
I'll get to the front of it and I'll tell
Yeah.
you what the front looks like.
Is that the one I just gave you? No, that's my revisions, the track changes. The track changes were 192 pages, so I'm gonna email that out to everybody.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I seem to have left my copy in my car.
wanna go grab? So the copy you're working from, it's got the red track changes, and just so everybody's clear, it is a total of, how many pages is this? Goes to page 20, is that? Make sure we're all on the same draft. You have 20?
I don't know where I have this is from Richard.
21? Maybe 21. But the main thing is it's the track changes, the red track changes copy. Is that what, yeah, that's, you got the same one, yeah. So
Yeah.
top of page 12 has, yeah, that's the right one.
Okay.
So let's just hang on just a second here and wait for Jason, because he has the first section, actually. This is still, good.
Okay, so
I took it out of the book. The red track changes, that was in this book.
right,
I don't see
everybody
it.
took it out, take it home.
No, I took my book home, so I left it in the book.
Oh,
Rick, on the version that you
Back with it in the
distributed,
book.
what did you draw from? What's it based on, in other words? The changes that you
You
made?
took your book home
My
too.
experience.
but then I dropped the book back on.
But did it incorporate
Document in there.
the mayor's remarks as well? I mean,
I started
No,
with the
I'm-
mayor's remarks,
But it's not here now.
incorporated those into the document, and then I made additional
Take
changes.
yours out of yours?
Yeah, I take
and did you email, or you say you will email?
I didn't take.
I
mine
will
out.
email the track changes of of this document to you. It was significantly too large with all the track changes to print out,
How many pages did you do?
192 pages,
From a 30-some-odd page ordinance turned into 192 with track
Yeah.
changes?
yes.
What did you do?
I can go through generally.
You really want to know that answer?
I'm afraid. I'm actually quite afraid to hear.
22.
Nothing detrimental.
No, it's just, that's a lot of work. You have
I've
a,
been working on it the last 2 days.
yeah.
I've been in my cave.
Any luck?
I'm not sure what happened to it.
Well. Well, do you remember some of the things, or should we just move on from yours? It was the first
Yeah. So
couple
somebody have another
pages,
copy
20
of
page
it I could have?
sections.
Thank you.
66-1 to 21 is what I had written down.
Okay.
That's all right, we'll just punt it for now. Let's move ahead. Joe, you had the next group, which was
Okay, let me just pass this over to-
66, section 6622 is where he started. Ah, thank you.
His revisions.
Let me pass some of these down. Handouts, no less.
Can't get it separated.
Y'all sure?
Got it like Chris. Should be- Maybe it's only one sheet of paper, huh? No, it's two. Okay, that's all the copies I got.
I'll share.
Oh, you want to share? Okay.
Yeah, I thought some people could share it, you know?
I'll share. So do you want to, go ahead and
Okay.
tell us what you did. or-
Okay, what I did was,
Thank you.
I just went through the part that was assigned and made proposed changes to the paragraph, the sentence, or whatever. So if you got a copy of the red markup, provide a copy of the red mark, you'd be able to follow this by, at 6622A, add after the only sign, add the portion in red, delete the word permitted.
So in the interest of being efficient, in that section there, you're agreeing with, you're incorporating what was proposed, right?
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you this, in any of these items here, maybe if you could walk through and point out any ones that are different from what are here to call people's attention to, so we all see that.
If I had that copy.
Oh,
I would,
here.
But they
No,
took,
he needs
no.
his red copy.
they took mine, I left mine in the book, it's been taken out, so I don't have a,
Copy you could show me?
Yeah, what page number?
It starts 6621, which is on page number 22, page 5.
Is there an additional copy of Mr. Edmonds' changes?
We're sharing one over here. Do you have one?
Mine starts at
got one.
6641.
No, I mean the single page.
you can share mine if you want to,
There's one over here too.
Can you guys share
Okay.
one if you have two? You are
Here's
sharing
page
one? Okay,
five.
we don't have enough.
okay?
We can all share that.
We
He's
can,
gonna-
we
he's
can
gonna-
go
Can we make a
photocopy.
photocopy?
Yeah.
We have the technology?
Yeah. We're gonna make this.
Will the colors be accurate? That's right.
Sorry, it was too easy.
Kinko's.
Thank you.
So 6622, section A, Joe's agreeing with what was proposed here, in this
Yeah.
case by the mayor.
That's right.
So in sections A, B1, B3, or B4, looks like B3, is that something new that you're suggesting?
Well, he's got my copy here, let me
Okay.
see. He just, no, he took my copy off too. He make a copy of it, so. Okay, we're looking at B3,
Yeah.
B3, delete.
B3, number
Second
3
line.
about,
The second line of B3 as reads, curbstone. And curbstone.
so it looks like this is the section on construction over property.
I think I screwed something up here. D3, second line is read curbstone. And third line is read power of telephone. Well, I hate to say this, but I think that what I've did here for 3 is kind of screwed up. What I wrote here, I think I must have got it confused with something else.
All right, Well, let's move on from that, though.
Yeah.
Mike has a question here.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe Rick, you might need to answer this. So construction over other property, so with our plating and our existing ordinances, we've got setback lines and things like that. Is that language for item 3 necessary in this ordinance?
No sign shall be erected which projects over any property line other than that owned or leased by the applicant.
And I'm not arguing with the intent, I'm okay with it, I'm just wondering if that's covered in some way de facto in other places with some sort of higher level authority, like maybe the state or setback lines would take that into account?
I don't know of any.
Rick, do you know if it applies at all?
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't mind it being
I
in
don't
here.
believe so. I think a building setback line on a plat is for a building itself. I think that you can still put a sign
Okay.
within a building setback. So
Okay.
I would say that that is why it's incorporated
Safer to
into
be
this
here
code.
then?
Yes.
Okay.
No sign shall be erected.
So it looks like, I'm just perusing this, Joe, tell me if I'm wrong,
Yes,
but it looks like that the suggestions you have on here based on your review conform to what the mayor had submitted?
yes, it conforms, and I wanted to clarify that this talks about owned, leased by the applicant. If you encroach on a property, it's wrong, it's illegal, you can't do that, you can't encroach on another
Right.
property. That's what I wanted to say there, and I'm not sure how I got that wording.
Well, but I'm also,
Doing my own typing.
I'm suggesting for the entire for the entire page, it looks like
Oh, yeah.
all of these
Yeah,
items are,
right,
okay.
right,
So that
yeah.
could save us time, we don't need to walk through each
Yes,
and every one of
right,
them.
right.
Unless there are questions.
I do have one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
So
Just reference where you are.
on 22B4, proximity to other signs, looks like the mayor said so far nothing controls proximity. I'm not sure we took care of that.
The Planning and Zoning
That
Commission
would be
Yeah.
sign density or
shall review
in other
all
words?
sign requests to ensure compliance with this code of ordinance. That's what I suggest.
But he's making the point, there's nothing that controls how close together or how near other things they can be.
Well, I guess my position on this is if the Planning and Zoning Commission review all requests, that solve all of those issues.
True, but to what measures do we determine?
You're saying,
Proximity is-
how would the Planning and Zoning Commission determine what's right, what's wrong, where it should be not?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Are you saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission need to define now where the line should be, what?
I think that's the way I'm reading his highlight, is there's nothing that's saying how close a sign can be to another sign or to, I don't know, a structure or anything like that. It's
So-
open.
Okay,
So
but
what
he-
is the basis on which P and Z would make that determination? Is
Right,
that what-
and that's the other
what-
But does
that's
that
my
need to be
question.
spelled out?
That's my question, is if he's asking that. Because what the mayor is suggesting is eliminate the word permitted.
Where are you?
He lines out permitted. Allowed to be displayed and visible from a public right-of-way
I
permitted.
think we're looking at different things, Joe. I think we're in section 22B4.
Yes.
22B4, okay. Nothing.
So I don't know if this is problematic
They
from
shall
a
review each sign request to include the effects on neighboring property as well as the proximity of other signs. Okay? My suggestion is that we don't need that paragraph at all.
Rick, did you have it in your section, in your review of it? I don't know if you know where we're at here, 6622B4.
Is this one titled location restrictions?
Yeah,
I kind of changed that whole section.
yeah, I'm just looking at it. It's not, it's totally different.
But the mayor is saying we don't have anything yet that controls proximity. Why are we saying this? So my position is, I think he's right. Let's delete it. Get rid of it. It serves no purpose.
It looks like you pulled it. I can't tell what you did.
Yes. So, can you ask me that question one more time, please?
So the question was, if I have this right, that in currently, as it's written in the code, it says that the Planning and Zoning Commission will take into account the proximity of existing signs to a proposed new sign. The question becomes, what's the standard by which Planning and Zoning would judge proximity?
Exactly.
And so that prompts the question then, is it okay to just leave it like that and let the Planning and Zoning Commission, based on its evaluation, make that determination? Or does there need to be some sort of
Consistent measure.
stated?
I think it gets back to what we did at the last meeting. Before we were talking
In Old
about,
Town.
we were talking about signs, because there's gonna be a sign and sign's gonna be too close to other signs. I think we're getting into the same kind of thing.
Right.
So my suggestion is we need to just take this out of it. We need to make rules, policies that are clear and understandable. I don't think that we voted on that was a clear, understandable policy, because the policy allowed it, but because we had a different idea, we didn't allow it. We as a group.
So Rick, in that restriction section, and based on your reading of it and revision, did you leave in any subsection consideration of proximity? It's absent, so that's why I can't tell.
No, I mean, I believe that the Planning and Zoning Commission, by its charge under design and construction standards and what you have that you can approve and can't approve, I think that it's inherent in your ability to deny a sign or a sign because of its location. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's impossible to get a black and white. I think it's impossible to pin down every little aspect of what a sign will be. It is, again, been given to this commission by city council through ordinance to review signs and all that entails. So I don't think it's necessary personally to say what exact distance one sign can be from another.
But it looks like, in your revision, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and
No,
forth
that's
between
fine.
the documents, but you don't have any, at least here, there's no inclusion of proximity to other signs as a restriction at all. Not that it should be spelled out what that proximity is, but that is an issue
just
that
absent
falls to
now.
the purview of the P and Z. If you look at the current code, if you simply took out, as the mayor had highlighted, well, actually, not take it out, but just leave it as it is, leave the current code as it is, that just announces that proximity is an issue of consideration.
Okay. Yeah, okay,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah. And just because of what our authorities as a commission are, then we can go from there.
I mean, if you go
That would
to
work.
66-7-3, which is reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission, I think it's pretty all-encompassing. It says the commission shall review the appearance, lighting, form, color, character, dimensions, and materials of all signs required under the chapter, and the commission shall determine whether all signs requiring approval under this chapter are in conformance with the chapter. The other thing I think that's important to look at is the design guidelines that are included within Chapter 98, which includes signs. Those design standards do include signs. So
If we go back to the mayor's comment, though, nothing talks about proximity.
that is true, and I think that by including something like proximity, you may be creating another situation where all you're gonna be getting is variance requests.
I agree. I recommend subparagraph 4 be deleted, taken out completely.
All right, so we'll keep track of this. So that's an issue I think that maybe we'll revisit. Currently, you've taken it out in your version. your draft currently.
I just took out that sentence. I didn't
Right.
take out the
Right.
concept of.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. All right, as I look at the rest of what Joe's review is, and if you turn the page into prohibited signs, it does echo what the mayor has suggested, so I think we could be more efficient, and just ask if there are others who have questions or comments about anything on that page under prohibitions or prohibited acts.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Certainly.
Let's move ahead to the next section, which was Mario, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was accountable for 6643 through 6645, and I saw that everything read clean. I don't have any changes. Everything looked good to me.
And to clarify, for example, when the mayor had made comments on those sections, are you concurring with those?
I'm concurring with the edits that the mayor and I believe Rick made in the red.
So I have a question on, this is 6644, Section B. Temporary portable signs, it's on page 9. It currently reads number 1 per lot, 1 temporary portable sign may be installed in conjunction with the banner on the same lot. So proposal is to take out banner altogether. Now, it's actually tied in, 4 ties in with number 9 about duration. You're allowed to have 1 per lot, 90 days from the time from the time that it's issued. When the permit is issued, you have 90 days, right? I don't know what you suggested. Did you change that?
Put 60.
What page?
You put 60 days.
60, okay. Is it renewable? I don't think it's renewable currently, is it? Okay, so,
One time.
so we're on, which document do you have? So we're working from a track changes version of it, so it makes it confusing. If we had another copy, we could project it. It is, did you change numbering, Rick? Probably did not.
Did I change numbers?
You didn't change the code numbering or anything, right?
On my document, I did, yes.
Oh, you did? Well, that'll slow us down. Yeah.
Not the section numbering, he just changed the sub.
Well, it's not the same, unfortunately. At any rate, the broader point was about temporary signs.
Yes.
1 per lot. It's
Temporary,
currently,
yeah, temporary signs, this is, if I recall, was for the way the current sign ordinance reads. Let me go back here. Their temporary signs are meant to advertise a soon-to-be or newly opened business, okay? And your question was?
the question was about the duration. And so current code says 90 days renewable for 30 days.
Yes.
And I know reasonable,
That's portable. Are you referring to site development signs or the temporary?
temporary portable signs is what it says in the code.
90 calendar days from the date an applicant submits a permanent sign application to the planning
Section
commission.
6644.
It says 60 plus a 30-day renewal. I changed it in mine to 90, just to make it simple.
So the current code has 90 days.
Yeah, this one
This, this,
That's the track
This
changes
is
version
yours,
says
right?
90 days originally.
Right, that's what it is right now. Currently it's 90 days.
Currently it's 90 days.
I kept it at 90.
You kept it at
I'm having a hard time with this format, I admit, so I would need to pull up.
Why don't, yeah, go ahead and call it up.
I would need to pull up the existing code and compare it to what we're talking about.
On his,
If there's a more efficient way to do this, somebody please suggest it.
I think that's what he was.
Rick,
Other than
do you have a red line deal that you can pull up?
Of,
Do you have the mayor's redlined version?
I don't have, I think that's what this is, isn't it?
Yeah, but he doesn't have it.
Well, that would have been included in the
hold on,
last,
last month's.
Oh, that
Last
last
agenda
month's
pack.
agenda, it might,
I have it on my phone.
Copy, can you print it out?
Let's see if you can
Can
find
you
it.
print a copy of it?
I don't think it was last month. I think it was the,
Yeah.
That's
last month. Sorry.
That's how you, that's how
so it
you,
was October?
try October. No, November. Well, we'll find out.
I think it was actually last month.
Yeah, it was November.
November.
It was November meeting.
Yeah, because it's still in my,
Right there.
I carry them with my minutes.
Aha. All right, this
Okay,
looks
and
right.
we're looking at
So
section.
go to page 9 on this document and see if it's the same, on the very bottom of page 9.
90 days.
Yeah. So that's current, and at the top of the next page, it allows for 30-day renewable. So the question I pose is, in my, my reading of it, my understanding of temporary, 120 days doesn't strike me as all that temporary, as a short-term sign. And so I personally would like to see that either shortened to 60 with the 30 renewable, or 90 with no renewable, or, and I know, people might think otherwise, 120 is not that long, third of the year.
Is there any technical definition of temporary?
No, it's in the definitions, isn't it?
Now, Mr.
Now,
Chairman,
Rick,
Yep.
okay, what is permitted on a temporary sign?
Temporary information.
We're having a sale today, we're coming to town.
No, it's specifically for new business. It's a specific, that by definition.
This, the definition of it at the very end says, well, it does under the old thing, it says that the concept of that is that while they're going through the process of getting a permanent sign through P and Z and maybe city council, that they're able to put up a temporary sign to say,
Coming
hey,
soon.
we're open.
This may be off subject here. When putting, the banners that people put up, are they called temporary signs?
No, they're called banners.
Separate designation.
Separate designation.
so with going, question, sorry. if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chair was mentioning 60
This
days.
is
What's the typical time period when somebody gives you an application for a sign and it goes through our process and to approval? Would 60 days cover that?
And I think that's where the 90 days is coming from. I think probably 90 days is a little bit, allows some wiggle room. I think 60 days might cut it
Okay.
short. Particularly if the commission doesn't have a meeting.
Right.
I don't think normally it takes that long, but, and once the permanent signage is issued, the permit for the permanent signage, the permit for the temporary signage is revoked. So theoretically, they're supposed
Yeah.
to take it down.
Okay.
Do we
You
have
give
to
them 24
review
hours to take it
temporary
down, how do
signs?
you enforce it?
No,
Yeah, temporary signs, would they come to this body?
no.
They would not, till the permanent one comes.
The only thing that comes to this body is permanent signage.
Are you at all concerned about the fact that under temporary signs design, this is number 6, there really aren't any stipulations for what that temporary sign should be, compared to other sections where we actually have a little more robust discussion of it?
Well, you'll notice in my copy that I took design out of every category of sign,
Yeah,
because at the very beginning of the code, you talk about, the beginning of the chapter actually references the design standards under Article 2, Design and Construction Standards. And it says all signs within the city have to be in compliance with this design, with these design guidelines. So I don't,
Okay.
my goal here was to streamline this code and make it more efficient to read. And so I'm not a big repetitive guy.
So, in your experience, in terms of how this document is used on a daily basis in the community by developers, by staff, do business owners, do they even look at this? Or do they just design a sign and bring it into the city? And what I'm thinking is, will they even know? Well, somebody says, I need a sign, or I need a temporary sign, they're gonna look here, and they're not gonna see any discussion of design. Are we doing a disservice by not sort of alerting them to the fact that there's a design piece to it?
Well, I don't think that there's a lot that one really can do to a temporary sign to make it, I mean, it's not a permanent sign. It's meant to be quick and dirty up so that people know that you're there, and then taken down once the commission approves a permanent sign. I mean, there's, you know, you can only put lipstick on a pig so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose I could imagine a scenario where there's a temporary sign that has a design that we would never approve as a permanent sign. It's garish, it's ugly by this commission's determination, doesn't fit with the city, but it's made that way to draw attention, hey, we're open for business, right? That's my only concern, and I don't know how we address that.
8-foot-tall hot pink gorilla up for 120 days.
Well, I've addressed that in mind.
If it doesn't strike anybody else as problematic, I'm not gonna push it, I just wanted to call
I see
attention
what
to
you're
it.
saying, yeah.
Now, the design standards would apply to a temporary sign, right?
Design standards apply to every sign.
Okay. I mean, as long as
That's
we,
the safe zone right there.
I mean, I
The
just
way that
wonder,
this- the way that this works in practice is whether a commissioner calls or a council person calls and says, we don't like this, and then staff's job is to make sure that we can figure out how to make it go away. I mean, unless it's illegal or immoral or unethical, we're gonna do that. That's really the safeguard there.
And I don't think we want to be, as a body, approving temporary signs. I mean, we'd be pulling our hair out every month.
no, but if this can, as long as this could, have the language to ensure that the temporary signs are appropriate for the city. And if the design standards that Rick is referencing that are at the outset of the document accomplish that, good enough. I wonder, though, if it needs to be put back into every section, a line referencing back to the start. So if somebody looks at this, they know that,
Per such and such
you know,
chapter.
it's repetitive, yeah, but I just wonder if it's beneficial to applicants. But if applicants don't really even look at this stuff before they do their signs, then who?
Well, that's a good point. If you want to reference it to be repetitive and abbreviation, I mean, that's a nice suggestion. I mean, but I think Rick's point is well noted. I mean, he has it at the top, that he's including, encompassing all signs, and that's the way I interpreted it when I read it. So, as he said, he's not repeating it, but if you feel like a little reference needs to be repeated in each section, just a little something, a little phrasing, refer back to where it's stated, then so be it. But it's a temporary sign, it's not permanent, and as he suggested, if there's something really wrong, it'll be brought to the attention and something will be done.
Yeah, I just broadened it out since he mentioned that you took it out of all of the signs, right? The discussion design.
With the discussion of referring back to the design standards, yes, I took it out. There are some sections in mine that do have the design still in there, but that's because I'm referencing other aspects of the
Yeah.
sign.
I personally don't see any harm, just looking at the temporary one as an example of having, if you scroll down just a little bit, Rick, if this is the right place, wherever it is, like number 6, design, which currently says signs shall be maintained, blah, 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 just saying, see whatever, wherever it appears, so that the applicant knows. And I just look at that as being especially helpful, you know, to an applicant, so that they're given really explicit direction in each section, where to go to make sure that they're.
I can see your point. That's a good point, because it does kind of leave an open area for, well, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
I think a reference would be good, if you're gonna leave it like that. See paragraph so-and-so and so.
All right, I think we can leave this behind for now. Mario, you said everything else looked all right to you?
It looked good, sir.
Took out all the traffic. We take out traffic control because that's not something we govern. Is that right?
In the prior ordinance, we agreed to remove traffic control because that was something that's handled by the fire marshal or by the police department. There, in my copy, there were still some references to it, and so I further removed.
Removed them? Okay.
those.
All right, so let me look up for 1 second here.
Or there were actually types of signs that the commission had not reviewed, if ever, in an extremely long time, and so those were removed.
All right. Next up is Mike, you're gonna cover Richard, so you have some notes from him.
Not really, I
You
have
don't?
this red
Okay.
copy here, and I haven't seen any of his, was it 46 to 48?
46 to 48 is what he had.
Let's see where I'm at here.
There might have been something on the front of that package. All the way on, what was on the cover of it?
Oh, that was just his note saying what
What
chapter.
are you supposed to do?
Oh, wasn't anything inside it?
No, I guess he did highlight some stuff here, but I'm not sure.
Well, let's not make you guess, because that won't work. We can revisit this.
Okay.
Move ahead. Ron, I think you had next.
Yeah. It looks like just edits.
And this is sections 49 and 50, which start in the track changes copy on page number 14. Right?
Yes, and if possible, I would push mine back, because I did not do my homework.
I sense a pattern. Let me ask one question in this section. This is on page 14, the bottom, lighting, number 7. LED lighting, is that allowable? Do we speak to LED at all?
Probably preferred.
LED lighting is allowed for internal illumination. Most of the internally illuminated signs are LED in the inside. We don't allow LEDs like we have in the front of City Hall.
Is there a different call-out for them?
They actually call them like message centers now, or there's several different acronyms they use, but
Yeah.
LED just is a type of bulb essentially, but it's the same, uses the same technology. But a lot of lights now are LED as opposed to incandescent or fluorescent, so.
We call them in our code changeable electronic variable message
That's
boards.
one, yeah.
Or system or whatever. So yes, we do differentiate between what we want to prevent versus what is allowed within inside of a sign. As a bulb.
Okay. The other one, I know you haven't done this, I just want to point it out. This is on the next page, page 15, 6650, section B, number 2, size. And maybe, Rick, the question would be is, where had you had taken this? If you had adjusted it at all. Currently, this is the 145 square foot. And we've seen this, as you recall, we can go over by 20%, and we've done that in several cases over time. And maybe this is more for you, Rick, if you had agreed with that 145, or if you were proposing something other than that.
I kept it at 145 because if you recall, we increased it from 84 to the 145.
Right.
So I don't really have an issue with the 145. If they have something extremely creative or different, they can go through the creative sign review process.
Right. Good. Okay. Let's push ahead. Let's see, Jeff.
Yes, sir. Basically on mine,
This is section 51, starting on page 16.
on number 7, lighting,
B7, page 16, okay?
I just basically removed the word neon. Just indirect, internally illuminated. I don't know if we have.
Do we have, in other portions of this, neon is in here, isn't it?
The last iteration of this, when we revised it, we added neon to it.
I think Slim Chickens, actually, we approved.
That's right.
We approved it with neon in it.
So your proposal to take out neon based on thinking that we just didn't have it, or is there?
Yeah, basically, I didn't think we had it. Everything I thought would be, as far as neon, would be like in the channels, which are now pretty much all LED anyways. I guess I wasn't even thinking of any other type of neon except for open, close.
Open signs, that's what they're,
Open, close,
yeah,
but that's stated somewhere else.
yeah, they're neon.
Well, El Chaparral is covered in neon signs.
They do have. I mean, they're gonna be grandfathered in, but in my eyes, any new construction, neon signage is expensive. And I don't know if many people would be doing much neon anymore.
Is there an aesthetic reason to not have neon?
Bright and gaudy and.
Need there be more. Commercial people like it.
It's also historical.
What'd you say?
It's also historical.
You left it in because we added it in?
I left it in.
Yeah.
I left it in because I think it has a nice aesthetic, but again, some of this is my opinion versus what the commission wants, so I mean.
What are any other thoughts about neon? And it'd be bigger than just this particular section, which is commercial signs, a wall and hanging.
Yeah.
May I hear again, your reason for not wanting them? What was your reason for not wanting them?
I'm sorry, sir?
What was your reason for not wanting neon signs?
Just basically because I feel that they're gaudy and not attractive. The only neon signs that I know of, besides El Chaparral, would be open, close neon. I can't remember what we did for Slim Chickens, I don't think.
They had like a strip, I think, around the border. It was not a typical neon arrangement, if you will. It was just kind of an accent piece. Like a lot of times you think of neon sign, you think of something like handwritten, like a word at a neon. I don't think that was the case here. I think it was just a border. And it may not have actually been, it might have been like LED that looked like neon or something to that effect, but
Is it true that neon is expensive compared to other?
I couldn't tell you.
It's high man hour to make it.
It's what?
High man hour, because it's hand bent tubing, glass tubing.
Okay. Well, I'll make a note of that to come back to, more generally.
Yeah, so I just, if it is needed there. Then continue on in section 10, special provisions. Section C, it says an individual business with a basement entrance with no calculable frontage may have one sign with a maximum area of 6 square feet. I just put a note, it doesn't say where that can be located at. But I don't think there's too many businesses that have a basement entrance.
What to say to that? Well,
There was just no
well, it's got to
location
be on.
stipulation.
It's in the wall and hanging section, so I think it's assumed it has to be on the building by definition.
So basement entrance with no frontage.
So if you imagined, if there was a basement here, it would have to be on the above-ground part. You'd be allowed to have a sign. Is that how you would interpret it? Does this apply anywhere? I wondered, should we just take it out?
In my section, I took it out.
Are you good with taking it out?
Yeah.
solve that.
I don't,
Well, I could see if you had a site that had a particularly steep slope, and perhaps you had a tenant at, at the high level and a tenant at the lower level, and you approach the building from the high level, it might be necessary to have a directional sign to direct either street traffic or pedestrian traffic to the lower level. I think that came up, a similar analogous situation was there was an insurance company that it wasn't, I think a couple months ago, asked to put a directional sign because they were on a back door entrance to a second floor of a commercial building. And so they had to have a sign up front to say, hey, you go to our building, you go, back down this, around the side of the building.
Wayfinding signs, kind of like we have in Old Town.
But this is not that.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't, this is simply about
Advertising. the
Basement
business.
entrance sign,
on the structure sign.
Right.
So it wouldn't prohibit wayfinding.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying, I'm just saying an analogy. It
Yeah.
would be a similar situation where one would have
Yeah.
trouble finding but instead of just being a wayfinding sign, you say, this is really where this business is here.
Right.
Yeah, I eliminated this problem really entirely in mine, and I put a minimum area of 10 square feet is authorized for an organization with insufficient or no linear facade footage.
Say that one more time.
A minimum area of 10 square feet is authorized for an organization with insufficient or no linear facade footage, meaning that they would have less than 10 square feet in width for the facade, or they have no linear
And
facade.
that's specific for wall or
Yes.
hanging sign, okay. That sounds all right to me. Does that sound all right to you, Rick? Jeff? Yep. Okay. All right,
Plus 10 square feet.
and then continuing on in the next section, C, number 7, lighting again, the neon.
same thing, okay. Make note of that.
In subsection 10 of that special provision, it says must hang from a structural element of the exterior wall awning or overhang.
I'm sorry, where are you? I've lost it. What page? Page 17? Oh, it's the
Still
top half,
on
okay.
C on the top half,
Got
number
it.
10, special provisions.
Must hang from the structural element of the exterior wall, awning, or overhang, okay.
So that to me is just saying that it has to hang from an awning or overhang. If there isn't anything, I mean, what do you do then? They couldn't have like a big L bracket with a hanging sign?
Yes, so they'll make an end run around adding another sign by having a pole out front to.
I have an answer for that. I'll make a note of that one. It's on page 17. Number 10, C10, so you just passed it. Right there. Must hang from structural element of the exterior wall, awning, or overhang. And I think, Rick, it doesn't look like you retained this, if I'm,
I did.
you did? Okay.
On
just
mine,
kinda-
it's page 12, number 9. Projecting or hanging.
I could see someone have a pole sticking out, have a sign hanging from a pole, or having a sign suspended on a wire.
And so this would address, would
This would
prevent
say
that.
it must be attached,
Must be
Okay.
attached to the,
as opposed to sticking out of a wire, or hanging on a wire or a pole.
Okay.
and then down in section D, number 3. In number, I believe we've discussed this before. Maximum of 8 signs allowed, window or door signs used for the address, hours of operation, method of payment, professional association, security company, government notices, and open close status are excluded from the maximum number limit. I think we brought this up before, just, does that cover everything? Are there any new type of things that need to be added in there for restrictions. I can't think of anything.
I presume that when it says address, that would include a website address?
I would skew it to, yes. I'm not gonna worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure that those,
Unless a commissioner or council tells me I need to worry.
Won't hear it from me.
if there's anything else that needs to be excluded in that number.
I don't think so.
One more time, I was looking at the other part of that paragraph. It says 8 signs. Did you increase that number? Is that
I
what you're?
did not.
No.
But now that I think about it, after talking about the URL and stuff like that, what about your Facebook and all those icons, if you will? Yeah. Would that count? Would that be worth increasing to the 10 or 11 or not worry about it? I don't want to take a whole lot of time over it, but that might be a reason if you think you would count that.
Well, these are not counted.
That's excluded, right? So do we put in there excluded social media signs or social media?
If it was me, I'd include it under professional association and not worry about,
Yeah.
for example, LinkedIn, you could make an argument it's a professional association. It's a valid question. I don't have an answer to it.
We have,
I just thought I'd ask.
counting the excluded signs, you can have 15. You can have
So if
15.
you have 8 plus 7
Plus these 7 excluded. So if we miss one, and it has to count as one of their 8, if that really is a problem for a business, they could come talk to us, right?
I don't think I've ever seen a Facebook or LinkedIn in the door ever, as near as I can recall.
I don't know.
Seems counterintuitive, like usually you put it at your signature line on your email so you can click on it. and
Right. You can't click on the door.
Can't click on the door.
Yet.
IRL.
Yet.
Yeah. IRL.
Internet of Things, man, it's coming.
All of that,
These
as
new
the chairman,
tablets.
I had some funny sign images I'd love to show y'all one day, just as I was thinking about this, and one of them is very interesting. It's a shot of a car, and it's a rendering, but where it kind of makes signs completely superfluous, because everything is on your dashboard, everything is on your, projecting up on your windshield of your car. And it tells you, you're driving down the street, and it says, oh, there's Slim Chickens, there's the car wash, there's no, 50 years from now, you won't even need signs, so your car will just tell you
Wow.
something to think about.
Except it'll be a boat because we'll all be underwater. That's a different story. Let's go ahead. Do you have any others, Jeff?
Not in that section. The next section, 66-52 miscellaneous signs.
The infamous miscellaneous sign section.
On section A, service station price per unit volume change panels. Did you change that around at all? I haven't even looked.
Yes, I made that all multi-tenant. I basically made it a multi-tenant monument sign.
Okay. Because in here, it specifically says about, in number 4, it says up to 4 price per unit volume change panel signs for fuel on each street the service station fronts.
I didn't understand a
To
lot
me,
of this,
that's
to be honest with you.
confusing.
The size, it says a maximum size of 2 square feet per numbered or lettered panel. Well, that would essentially mean that it could only be as big as the $1.98 or the $2.65 times however many quantity, but that makes sense because you're gonna have a frame around it, you're gonna have a base, you're gonna have a lot of other stuff. So to me, this section didn't make sense to me. So I basically made it a multi-tenant monument sign that would require it, that it would have to have a base, that it would have to be at no bigger than what we allow on Bandera Road, because all these are gonna be on Bandera Road anyway, predominantly. That was where I took this.
Yeah. And that'd be good because this is confusing, the way it's stated.
Okay.
next section, menu boards, just number 7, lighting. Question neon again.
Okay,
Section C on flags. Size, it says the maximum size is 40 square feet. Business or corporate flag may not be larger than a federal, state, county, or city flag that is displayed on the property. And I didn't do my homework and find out what a typical United States flag dimensions are.
That's actually not too uncommon, 40 square feet.
40?
Well, that would be
To
8
me-
by 5.
by 5,
That's
yeah.
gonna be for a larger office building, like the one in front of here is 4 by 5. But we're relatively small.
but these are permanent, right?
This can be.
The maximum size of the flag would be 40 square feet.
Right. Where are their flags?
Here,
Anywhere in the city, give me an example.
in front of City Hall.
Right out here in the.
Can it?
Right, they're right, literally right in front of City Hall.
Oh,
Well,
here,
those
not
are-
over there. Yeah, okay.
But that's the American flag, right? And the state flag?
Yes.
I'm reading flag differently.
Too, like saying,
Yeah. Now open flag, coming soon flag, promoting a commercial flag. This flag is referencing,
some sort of advertising.
This flag is referencing, the only flags that we allow in the city of Helotes at this point are corporate flags or city, state, or federal flags.
so exempting city, state, and federal, where are their corporate flags around
Home builders.
that they put on the sites? But those are temporary, right? I mean, well. maybe
Doesn't have to be
not. They're
according to
not, yeah.
this. What about like First Choice? If they decide to put up a,
Actually, let me
40-foot
backtrack, you know what,
flag.
40 is actually pretty big.
I think it's
Yeah, I think it's
oversized.
20 is more common, but I just did a fire station and it was 20 for the city of San Antonio. The American flag was 20 square feet. With an American flag, and I think an SAFD flag would fly below it, and they were each 4 by 5. Now, I had a client recently did a 40 square foot American flag and a corporate flag, but we all were like, oh, that's really big. It was kind of the thought around the office.
I felt 40 was a little large.
All right. Yeah, and I think the other thing to remember is, I do think of flags, corporate flags, commercial flags, in the same way we talk about pole signs. It's not a style of signage that we really want to see proliferate.
Yeah, another example, so I did a small commercial building on I-10, and there was a residential, a multifamily development behind it, and they were running out of allowable sign area because of the city ordinances in place. And so the city kind of let them have a little leeway with putting flags up that advertised the apartment complex, the apartment complex logo on them, and they are permanent. I mean, they're gonna be on, they're gonna be there for as long as the apartment complex is open. I think I've seen in other apartment complexes as well, it's kind of an end run around permanent signage.
Right. So Jeff, you would advocate going lower than
Correct.
40, perhaps 20.
20 would be a good round number. And then continuing on to the next, down there, number 4, the number, it says the business may display one business or corporate, city, county, or national flag. The United States flag or a state flag shall not be subject to a limit number. So is that saying that somebody can put up Mexican flag or another national flag?
Yes. That's gonna be a First Amendment thing. That's not something that you wanna touch. So yes, and they can put up as many as they want.
Okay. And then,
It's not even governed by number?
No.
Why not?
I would need to check with the attorney on that question. I think when you're talking about national flags or federal flags, state flags and all that, I'm pretty sure permitted by the state and federal constitution.
Okay,
I mean, that's gonna be a First Amendment, freedom of speech type thing. A corporate flag is not, you can regulate, but United States flags or something like that, I would need to check on that before we did
Okay.
anything with that.
Then if that's the case, then the national flag port needs to be taken out, I would guess. Because right there, we're limiting it to one national flag.
okay.
Or reword it, rather than say national, say US flag.
Well, right, the next sentence, it says the United States flag or state flag.
Well, yeah.
Not subject to unit number. And then down in number 7, it says lighting, indirect lighting, which is about the only way a flag can be lit, but everything, a flag, indirect lighting is gonna be facing upward, and don't we always say full cutoff on all our lighting?
True, I think,
I have seen a couple places that had downlighting on flagpoles.
Yeah. They have those discs that
Yep.
can be.
What about a flag that's made of neon? Sorry.
Hey, you troublemakers.
put it at chicken place.
Mr. Chairman, could we change that, since we are in the light pollution era, that any new flagpoles could end up with downward lighting?
Good, I think the city's gonna get it.
Aren't you talking about official buildings that come under the auspices of a governmental agency or something? Because that's what the flag rules are,
Well,
And
it
the other
says
rules-
illuminated, but it doesn't say what direction.
but that's official. That has nothing to do with the guy with a service station. That's not an official business.
Well,
Not a
I would
government
say,
agency.
the official thing for flying a flag is it to be illuminated at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a government building, it must be.
Well, I thought it was
I think it's
universal.
No. I got a flag in front of my house. I fly it whenever I want to. What are you talking about? There's no light on it.
But here, we're specifically talking commercial.
Yeah, commercially.
We're in a commercial sign.
But I'm saying the rules for government flags apply to government agencies.
But we are saying here that it's illuminated.
You can require that if you want to, but I'm just saying, the official rules for government agencies. So
would-
then you can ride half flag, half staff and all that kind of stuff.
I would think we're better off leaving it, handling that on an ad hoc basis, not being too
I would
prescriptive.
say so too. I would say not be too specific.
So then in the next section, canopy signs, number 7, lighting indirect. Same thing on canopy.
Mr. Chairman, would that come into the downward? Was an outlet upward?
I guess. Let's see if we can find this. We don't.
Yeah, on my copy, I have on all the lighting with the I didn't put it on the flags because I think the city's gonna get a lot of flack on that.
Right.
But, on the lighting for the canopy, most of the time I put indirect, full cutoff lighting or internally illuminated lighting.
Okay.
Yeah, you do.
That'll address it.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, internally illuminated lighting is not full cutoff either.
Right.
It's just more
Shaded.
muted, it's just shaded, so.
Okay.
And then I concur with just eliminating all of section E.
Okay.
F, ATM signage, did you change that at all, or not? I mean, basically, there's nothing there.
I changed the verbiage a little bit.
Permit required from the department. Prior to installation, the commission shall review and approve signage.
Yeah. But basically, it's not given any type of, it's be a monument sign or any type of size requirements, or, I mean, is this gonna be a flashing neon sign that says ATM, ATM, ATM?
Well, that would fall on the commission to review and approve it. I think the reason that there's probably nothing there is because that varies so widely between small enclosures, drive-through lanes at banks, all that. I just don't know how. I mean, there's ATM signs everywhere.
But we're protected by having the review in there. The city's protected because it needs to come to get it to the commission for
Yeah, well,
approval.
I mean, generally speaking, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a bank come into town and they're gonna submit all their signs.
Right,
And that's gonna be a part of their sign package, that the ATM drive-through lane's gonna be on there.
right. It's probably not all that different from what we did with KFC with their drive-through in terms of the accessory signage that goes along with it, that we have the ability to ask them to change it, scale it back, or whatever it is.
I was concerned that there was no criteria at all whatsoever, but that's okay. And then the lovely G, creative signs.
That's where I picked up, I think, right?
You take it if you want it.
Yeah.
Dude, I just made a couple different comments here. Did you keep creative signage?
Yeah,
Did I?
he did, yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of creative
catch-all.
signs.
A couple of things, you know, in number 1, section A, encourage signs of unique design and those that exhibit a high degree of thoughtfulness. A high degree of thoughtfulness according to who?
Yeah, my thought was to take out that entire A section, because I thought that the introduction under purpose adequately captured it, which is to say, creative signs that meet the character and intent of the city's comprehensive plan and the guidelines of this chapter. I think is referencing them to the specific guidelines. I think, I don't know that we gain anything by saying thoughtfulness, imaginative, inventive. I mean, those are so amorphous.
Yeah,
I
by
think you
whose
kept it, Rick,
standards?
right? Would you be all right removing that language, or do you think that would leave?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I'm just jotting down notes as y'all go through.
No, that's good.
And then the only other comments I had in that one was down in section 4, subsection A. Number 1, it says, the sign shall constitute a substantial aesthetic improvement to the site and shall have a positive visual impact on the surrounding area. It's hard to quantify substantial, or what constitutes substantial aesthetic improvement, I would think.
Where are you reading from again?
He is on page 20.
Page 20. you know.
Okay.
And then number 2 below that is just repetition of
Yeah, 2 should come out.
A above.
Now, did you take out design, discussion, and no, you left it in on this one, Rick, right?
I didn't touch creative signs too.
Right. Do you think it would be 2, if you took out number 2 and you took out number 1, are you then not leaving enough sort of direction?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this creative signage language is simply superfluous. I mean, it's filler to basically say that somebody can submit a sign that doesn't fit into any category, and the commission and the council can review it, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. That's all it does. All these words really frankly don't mean anything other than the process that you go through on the approval authority and the applicability. That's really what it does. I mean, the premise behind this was when we did Old Town, when we revised the Old Town codes or created the Old Town Helotes Special District, they, the wordsmith, if you will, for chapter 98, section 9872, the Old Town codes, was a code writer. And basically, he brought up a whole bunch of images of signs that would not apply, would not fit within any context of a wall sign. I mean, one of the signs I remember was a car falling through the roof of a building. Actually, I think that was in San Antonio. I think it was downtown somewhere. And of course, that wouldn't fit, but it fit within the context of this hamburger joint quite well. And so his opinion on this was, does the city want to limit this, or does the city want to encourage this type of unique approach to signage? And the thought then was encourage it, but we want to review everything before both P and Z
Right.
and city council want to review it before it goes forward.
So that a sign like that is imaginative, creative, unique, but maybe judged to be just not appropriate for right here, for example. I mean, that gives you the ability to say, no, thank you.
Yeah, and you have some words here that you can hang your hat on, because it's in the opinion of the commission that you don't believe that it exhibits a high degree of thoughtfulness, or that it's not imaginative. I mean, anything.
I think if we take out the one we identified, the one that's repeated, the thoughtfulness one, but leave the other, that's all right. I mean, some of the language is, we laugh about it, but it's kind of judgmental, right? It's not very thoughtful.
Yeah, exactly, and who's, substantial aesthetic improvement, it's like, I think it's beautiful, but you may think
Right.
it's the ugliest thing in the world.
Right.
But in the opinion of the commission overall, I mean, basically, you're looking at 5 versus 3, or 4 versus,
Oh,
5
right.
versus 3.
Right. Up in, this is under creative signs, under purpose, number 1. Is it appropriate, do you think, to add in planning and zoning? The very last part of it, upon approval of the city council, do we need to insert planning and zoning there as well?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, under 3 below it.
Yeah, I see it there too. Maybe add it in 1 as well. Are you good, Jeff? Is that?
Yeah. That's,
I
Did you
I
pass
had
this to
many
Rick?
of the same things as Jeff in the same sections, but beyond this, I don't believe
That
there was anything
PowerPoint that I
additional
sent.
that I added. So I'm looking in the wrong place. Yeah. The rest was non-conforming signs. I didn't make any changes there, or to garage sale signs. Do we have an ongoing issue with garage sale signs in terms of, no, okay, that's the only thing I was thinking about. Do they usually end up, it seems, in the right of way?
They pop up on Friday or Saturday, and they're gone by the time we get back to work on Monday. So, I mean, I really don't think there's a huge issue with it.
Good.
Yes, we pick up hundreds of them every week.
What are you referring to? I mean, what, give me an example.
The Continental Medallion, they stick them in the highway right down the up and down
Yeah.
the railroad. Those little metal things.
Yeah. Kind of whack-a-mole.
And also I have fireworks stands that have.
What kind of a penalty do you guys have for people who put signs up illegally?
Say again?
What kind of penalties they have for putting the sign up illegally?
Well,
Somebody stick a sign in the yard, say they're gonna sell something, what kind of penalty do they have? Without a
well, according to code, it's a $500 a day penalty.
$500 penalty, huh?
Yeah.
Or as
How
high
many-
as, or 500?
How many have you collected?
Well, in practice, enforcement in practice is different than enforcement in
Yeah.
theory.
Okay.
It's a lot more difficult to enforce something, if you're gonna go through the court process and all that is, than it is to just sometimes just pick the sign up and throw it in the back of the truck and throw it away.
Okay.
But yes, on bandit signs, we pick up quite a few of those. But they pop up over the weekend again, so. And those bandit signs, they actually have companies that these companies subcontract to, and if you've ever seen the trucks with the trailers that have thousands of these things, they just go down and they make their route and put them back up again, so.
Jeff,
Yeah, I just had a quick one on garage sale signs,
where are you?
page 15 on Rick's.
Page 15 on Rick's copy, okay.
Yeah. You know, you got purpose, size, height, and then on number 4, it says number and none.
The regulation is, oh, I see what you're saying.
The regulation, none meaning no maximum.
Oh, okay.
I read, yeah, I know how you read that, yeah. Yeah.
None allowable is the way I saw it,
Yeah.
but then you're saying that you can have that. One other question I have, just came to my mind. I don't know if this is considered under signage or not. I don't think there's been a problem with it in Helotes, but down Bandera Road, people with Sushaholic signs or the,
Handheld.
handheld signs.
It's in here.
An actual person out
Yeah.
in, it is addressed in
here.
here? Okay.
It is allowed. It's gotta be a permit, right? Yeah.
What was that guy?
You can't block the
Was out there
sidewalk.
for
with the-
a year.
In front of the gold store.
That's what it was.
Do we wanna say back on garage sales, just looking at the lighting, none, do we wanna say none allowed?
Sure.
Just being proactive. Just being proactive here. All right, well, I know we didn't hit Jason's or Richard's or Ron's. And given the hour, I don't know that we really want to go farther with this. I do want to ask Rick, we could revisit yours next time if that's all right. But where in yours, if anywhere, is anything addressing the freestanding, non-sign signs, the residential entryway type signage that we've had issues with in the city? Is that something that you at all had added in?
What type of sign are you?
Residential entry signage that was actually more structure than sign?
Oh, spires
Spire,
and
Pete.
all of that. No, I have not addressed that at this point.
Okay,
But that is, you'll notice in my section, I did not include definitions, and I did not include some of those sections. I'm still working on those.
so you envision that as a new separate section within,
Within the, I don't know if it'll be in the sign code, that's, because
That's
it's
just what I was-
technically not a sign.
Yeah,
So-
I see that you put the provision number 5 that this chapter does not apply to works of fine art which do primarily not identify or advertise.
Yeah, so I frankly don't know how to handle that yet. But that will be a part of this discussion and will be
Okay.
addressed before it goes to council.
that's what I want to assure that
Yeah.
we have that opportunity.
I know that it's late, but I did kind of want to go just quickly through, if I may, Chair, my copy.
Quickly.
Just to,
Hit the highlights.
to kind of tell you where I focused my attention and how I rearranged things. Going on, and I'm just gonna go through here from memory. So starting on page 1, there's nothing on page 1 that, in my opinion, was changed significantly. Page 2, again, I heavily relied on Article 2 throughout the document, and I did not reiterate. I did make a note that the chair would like to reiterate the Chapter 98 zoning Article 9 throughout the document, so I'll go back and change that. Code requirements. Prior to this, I believe, and I have to go back and look at my red line, which I don't have. I'm gonna email the red line out to you. I referenced the International Building Code. I did add the 2015 edition. It did not reference an electrical code, which of course every sign has electrical in it, so I did reference the National Electrical Code 2014 edition, which is the same one the city has today. Exempted signs, I basically wordsmithed some of this. It didn't change the context of any of these.
Rick, and skip the wordsmithing part, but just back on the code, the IBC, are those the most recent additions?
Those are the most recent additions that the city has adopted.
Okay.
I might say just whatever most recent code the city's
Yeah,
adopted.
take out the year,
Yeah, that's your-
so that you don't
Change
have
out-
to.
We're about to, San
close
Antonio's
something
about to
off.
adopt 2018. I suspect we're not far behind.
Codifying would be easier that way.
I mean, that's,
There's
but
a
the,
lot of
but the
stuff.
code, but the building
San
code.
Antonio has a lot of amendments, though.
But the building code has, I mean, that's adopted elsewhere in the code. And so if we just say the most recent code as adopted by the city of Helotes,
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with
yeah,
that.
then.
I
that
was
way
talking
we're-
about the
Covers it,
2018.
otherwise
I'm
you say,
not quite
"Oh,
sure that we
I
would
only have to
get
Yeah,
ready to
do
go to
15.
2018.
We'll remember to go back and edit this later on.
I added specifically municipal activities under the exempted portions of the signs. Before we relied on official government notices, I added municipal activities because it was in other parts of the code there. Location restrictions, I did not change much of that, but there was that section that I did remove,
Right.
I believe from D on that. Prohibited signs, this is the most significant change I made under prohibited signs, and I have a feeling that some people in council are not gonna agree with this, but I did add in there freestanding signage. That was already included in there, but I think it said pole signage before. I'm removing pole signage entirely from this document and calling pole signage freestanding signs, because that is the term that I have found most widely used for those types of signs.
That'll be in the definition?
Yes, roof signage, off-premise signage. Now, I did add the caveat here, we do have the Old Town, for both freestanding and off-premise, we do allow both of those types of signs within Old Town. So I added the exception here and referenced that code section. The LED changeable electronic, that did not change. Here are the two, or the three. I added feather and VIS flag signage, flag, wave, blade, and teardrop banner signage, and inflatable advertising signage such as but not limited to hot air balloons, rooftop inflatables, inflatable dancers, and/or air puppets, and the like. And all of those are commercial names. I didn't come up with these names for banners, and so I will have a definition, assuming you agree with this, at the end for every one of those types of banners. Now, we've always had the issue, frankly, with the Festival Association for Carnival. In the prior code, we had an exception for them. But if you noticed, they used these flag banners and all of that during Carnival, and they used regular banners as well. So instead of, I didn't like the definition that we had before, and you can see it in the red line, or you can see it in the current code. So I put for signage to be displayed within the following property, section 66-31A 5 and 6. Shall not apply to a nonprofit organization with a combined land area of 40 or more acres of real property accessible from Leslie Road. They do, you can't name the organization, but you can carve out for it.
Got it.
And the current code already did that.
So Rick, quickly, so these are just complete exemptions or prohibitions. So anybody opening new can't for 30 days put out one of those,
We don't allow it currently,
we don't?
no. The only thing we would allow with that would be a banner. And so there's always been the question of whether those flag things are banners or whether they're flags or whatever. So I'm trying to close that loophole. I think there's gonna be a variety of opinions on, for maybe this body, but also council as to whether we should do that. Prohibited acts basically remained the same from what I can recall. I'm sure I wordsmithed some of that. Sign classifications. Under sign classifications, so we had residential signage before, we had residential subdivision, and I'm on page 5. Entry signage, I changed or I combined banner and flag signage, which would be banners. It references the prohibitions on these flags, but also talks about the corporate flags and the American flags in that section. So that is different than the way the current code reads. I removed portable from temporary, because there was no distinction between a temporary and portable sign. And so I just named it temporary and site development signage, because there is a distinction. One's for open for business, and one is you're developing the property for a new shopping center. Freestanding real estate signage was always in there, political signage was always in there. Commercial monument signs for single business, multi-tenant, those were always in there. Wall and projecting hanging signage and window signage and miscellaneous signage. I did some rearranging and added lump stuff into miscellaneous signage because it was all over the place. It didn't fit in neatly into the categories above, so I added handheld signage, garage sale signage, and I believe creative signage under miscellaneous signage. Nothing really changed under residential signage. Residential subdivision entry signage did not, to my knowledge, change drastically, but I did change the lighting to, like I did throughout the document, to the indirect, full cutoff lighting. Now, in the past, the commission has allowed them to uplight residential subdivision entry signs. That's not technically, that's not full cutoff. It's indirect, but it's not full cutoff. So the question is, do y'all want to change it to where we're only requiring full cutoff?
What about existing?
This wouldn't apply to existing. Yep. I clarified that landscaping has to be around the entire base of a sign, that you can't have any advertising other than advertising the residential subdivision, and that would require commission approval as well. Then you can see below that banner and flag signage, there were, under banner signage, it's always been 64 square feet. It used to say no higher than 12 feet from average grade. I lowered that to 8 feet from average grade, because 8 feet's pretty tall for a banner. 12 feet was significantly larger. Now, on the number, I put one per lot, unless within a multi-tenant shopping center, in which case 2 signs are allowed per lot. That was the way it was before. I put that, it was always that they had to be parallel or perpendicular to the right-of-way. I did add that signage can be located in the public right-of-way in Old Town. We do allow that. And I put that off-premise signage located on private property is allowed at the intersection of State Highway 16 and Leslie Road. Because right now, all of those banners that we've always allowed on Carnival and for
Broadway Bank.
Highland Games, all that, those technically are off-premise signs. I never thought about it like that until I read this. I was like, they're all off-premise signs. So I think that we should address that, because I don't think anybody intends not to be able to use that intersection for particularly nonprofits that are having major events. Lighting, none allowed. Landscaping, none. The duration I changed. The whole 30 days per calendar quarter is, from my opinion now, having dealt with this for 2 years, very difficult, number one, it's difficult to enforce, and it's difficult to keep track of. And so I think personally that we should just allow it for a certain number of days, that they get a permit, and if they want another one, they can come back and get another permit for that number of days. I changed it to 60 calendar days, and that it has to be removed within 24 hours of the permit expiration. You may think that's too much. You may like it the way it is, but
How will you enforce 24-hour removal?
well, we know when the permits are expired.
Yeah.
And so theoretically, the code enforcement officer should be able to go around and
Check the
say,
list
this is out of date, or it isn't. And actually, we put stickers on the back of all banners that are legally permitted, so we know when they're expired or when they're not. This has also been a big point of contention among the business community. They do not like the 30 days per calendar quarter, because they don't believe that it allows them sufficient advertising. But I do think somewhat it's tempered by saying that you can only have one per lot. I mean, I think what we're trying to minimize is visual clutter. And so I think the fact that we're only allowing one per lot or 2 per tenant shopping center is probably, compared to surrounding areas, relatively stringent. I don't know. So that was one of the things I think that we need to talk about. Special provisions, I changed this wording a little bit. It used to allow at the corner 2 banners and allowed me to authorize one that was 150 square feet and another one that was up to 100 square feet. So that would have been 2 at that corner, essentially at the corner of 16 and Leslie Road, that equated to 250 square feet. I don't think we've ever permitted 2 signs there that were that large. And so I just put one at 150 square feet. I did add in that they had to add the ID tags on the back of all the signage. And I did add in that caveat that essentially it doesn't apply to, it doesn't apply to the Festival Association for stuff that's internal to the property. The next one would be flag signage. I heard 40 square feet is too large. I didn't change much of this from what it was prior. I believe I added landscaping, that it needed to be in a landscape setting. And that's, oh, flags. The other thing I did do was, I kept that the commercial flag can't be larger than a federal, state, county, or municipal flag. I did make federal, or the government's federal, state, county, or municipal. Before, it just included either federal or state. Sometimes it made reference to county. I just went and added all governmental entities that could be within the city of Helotes. 1 commercial flag per lot, and no maximum number of flags per lot for federal, state, county, or municipal flags. We can talk about that. I can get an opinion from the attorney on that, but I'm pretty sure that when you start talking about federal, at least federal and state flags, you're gonna get into some First Amendment issues there.
And that might work both ways, Rick. Too many may be also a problem.
Maybe. Temporary and site development signs, I only have 2 in here. One's temporary, and that's for a newly opened business, and the other one is for a true site development sign, which would be if you're actually developing a site and you're building a shopping center. Prior to this, if I recall, temporary and site development signs were 2 different square footages. And essentially, while one talks about a soon-to-be or newly opened business, and I'm thinking more along the standalone business. If you have a sign that says Chick-fil-A coming soon, why is that a smaller square footage than if you have a sign that says a retail shopping center coming soon? Particularly for a standalone business. It's kind of the same thing, at least in my opinion. So I just equated the 2 and made sure that they matched square footage for square footage and height for height. We do limit temporary signage because it's kind of like banners. You want to only allow 1 per lot, or 2 cases or 2 signs in a multi-tenant shopping center because they're like banners, right? You don't want a whole bunch of signs up in front of an existing shopping center. I didn't change anything in political signage other than just some phrasing. Monument signs on page 9.
Hey, Rick, may I interrupt you here? Given the hour and given we're only about halfway through, I think it might be useful to pause
Okay.
and come back to this. If you will send out the red line version, that might help people visualize particular changes. I'm intrigued to see how it got to be 192 pages, but
Basically what I was trying to do here is provide the commission with because the mayor's red lines, there was some substance there, but there was a lot of grammatical stuff. And so I'm trying to give you a document that you can start from and either disagree with or agree with, so that we can go section by section like we did when we amended the sign code prior. And so that's what I was trying to give you tonight. I owe the commission the definition section and the red lines of this section and a discussion about spires or towers.
Is that what we're actually gonna call it?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't think I want to include it within the signage code though, because it's not technically a sign.
Right.
Is it a
Anything you want
promotional
to.
structure?
I'm thinking that we make exceptions within chapter 18 with the International Building Code. I think it may fit more in there for commercial for commercial or residential structures to define or maybe in the zoning code where we have height restrictions for certain types of structures.
I think my personal opinion would be that the height limit is one of the most important factors, is
Right,
not let them go bonkers with that
whatever you call it.
20-foot tall windmill or obelisk or whatever it happens to be.
But there needs to be some leeway in that too, because what about like windmills?
Yeah,
We have,
We're exempted as this.
no, but remember the commission approved the windmill in front of Elm Hollow Apartments as a part of the sign criteria.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a windmill is a tower, I'm just.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
With the arm, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I wanna thank everybody
Will you
for
take a
walking through
motion?
this. This was,
You ready for a motion?
what's that?
You ready for a motion?
In a minute.
Not quite yet, almost, but I want to thank everybody for this, and Rick for your work on it as well. It's a long process, and I think having Alex here is good, so that, you know, council is aware of what's going on with this discussion, and hopefully would be supportive as we go forward. But I think we're getting a lot closer to having something. And so we're going to see this again next time, and then we're also, the earlier item about the overlay district, we'll come back to that as well.
Yeah.
Looking at other possible changes, so. With that,
Mr. Chairman,
Ron, yes.
may I please make a motion to adjourn?
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor, signal aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:10. Thank you all.